So I decided to loan him this money, and I was able to send him the 6K, and the next day he flew into Dallas to come be with me. And so this was when I got even more excited because I felt like we were really starting to, build a life here in Dallas together. After the gala was done, it was a couple days and my parents came to visit me in Dallas for Thanksgiving. And so I remember he went to go stay at a hotel because my parents, obviously, they're Nigerian, very traditional. We wanted to be respectful. So he went and stayed at a hotel and my parents came to visit, and he was here when my parents got in town. And I'm telling you, my parents fell in love with him immediately. And I think watching him with my dad it just warmed my heart because they just instantly connected. And my dad, like everyone else, was very fascinated by him. And I remember the following day we went to African market with my parents. It was just me, my ex, and my parents. And he's talking to my parents about the Olympics, and they're asking him all these questions. And he was like, yeah, the gold medal I gave to my mom, she has it. And then the bronze medal, I actually donated it to charity. And I'm just like, this guy is just so freaking amazing. And so we had an amazing Thanksgiving. It was his first Thanksgiving in the States. And my grandmother had recently just passed away. And this is my dad's mom. It was really, really sad. And he was talking to us about the plans for the burial. And so he said, we're gonna do the burial in May. It's gonna be in the village in Nigeria. And he looks at my dad and he says, I'll be there. And I remember looking at him like, I don't think you really understand what you're agreeing to. And he said, I don't care. I'm gonna be there. I'm like, we're talking about the village in Nigeria. We're not just talking about like a big city where you can get a little bit of culture shock where you or go back to your hotel. And no, we're talking about being in the village. And he said, I don't care, I'm gonna be there. And so that was when I realized this man really takes my culture seriously. He wants to be there for me. He wants to be there for my family. And that meant so much to me. And so at the end of the trip, I told him, I said, this week has showed me that I know that I want to spend my life with you. And I'm just, thank you for being the man that you are. And he said, I want to spend my life with you. And I'm going to let you know, I already know that I want to marry you someday. And I don't want you to ever doubt that. And so he asked me, he's like, I have a question. Do you have an idea of what ring you would want? And I was like, I have some ideas, but I have not thought about it really extensively. And so he said, what are your thoughts on us going ring shopping? And keep in mind, at this point, we've been dating for 4 months. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. So we found a jeweler. We went and we tried on some rings. I remember I'm trying on lab grown and natural, and I'm looking at the price differences, and I'm like, I am not allowing you to buy me a natural stone because that number is just crazy. I'd rather us spend money investing, doing other things. And he said, well, let me look into it because I kind of do want to get you natural. And I was like, no, we're getting a lab grown. And I remember if you've, gone ring shopping, the price difference is astronomical. And so I remember I picked out a ring that I really liked, and then we left, and that was basically the end of the rings for that moment. And so he goes back to Denmark, and the plan was for me to go on a trip with him for Christmas. As I mentioned previously, my parents were traveling for Christmas, and him and his older sister do not have a relationship. They can't be in intimate settings together, so they alternate Christmases. He had last Christmas, so this Christmas was her Christmas. So we already had planned to spend Christmas together. And so originally we were talking about going to South Africa, like I mentioned before, and then we started looking at flights, and he was like, it's a long trip, I only want to fly business, and they were $12,000 round trip. And he's like, well, maybe we can make it work. I was like, we are not spending that much on flights to South Africa, that's not happening. And so I started looking at other flights, and then we talked about maybe going to Brazil, and then he tells me, okay, make an itinerary and look at hotels and flights and everything and send it to me, and I'll book it. We're gonna go to Brazil. I said, okay, sounds good. So I wake up one day, I said, hey, did you book the travel? And he was like, no, I haven't, but there's something I need to talk to you about. I go, what's up? He goes, so I talked to a doctor because my back has gotten really, really bad, and it turns out I have 2 herniated discs and I'm gonna need to get surgery. And I said, okay, that's fine. And he said, I'm gonna have to get surgery December 21st. And I said, oh wow, okay, well, that's fine. We don't need to go on a trip. I'll just come to Denmark and I'll help you recover and everything. And he said, actually, no, I don't want you to come to Denmark. I want you to be there, but I don't want that to be the first time you meet my parents, and they definitely want to be there. And at this point, I'm like, what do you mean? I'm your girlfriend and we're talking about a future. Why would I not be there when you're getting a major surgery? So he tells me that he needs to get a back surgery and he does not want me to come to Denmark because he wants me to meet his parents with him there, because there's a serious language barrier and he wants to make sure that I can communicate with them through him. And he's like, I don't want you to be using Google Translate to talk to them the first time you meet them. And yeah, and at first I was really upset because I felt like he wasn't treating me like I was his family. And I remember having a conversation to my mom about it because I was really frustrated. And she asked me, she said, do you think his parents know about you? And I remember I got really defensive because I told her, in what world would his parents not know about me? And I told him, you know, I really want to be there. I was still kind of like pushing on him for like the full day. And I remember like that was like one of our first like little fights. At this point, we had not fight at all. Like we have not had a single fight in the last 4 months because it's December of 2022. And so I told him, I said, listen, I really want to be there for you. And he was like, honestly, I don't want to like fight about this anymore. Like, let's just put this to rest. And I remember being frustrated because I also didn't have plans for Christmas because my family was going to be traveling, and I had planned to spend Christmas with him. So I remember I reached out to my best friend, Natalie. I was talking to her about the situation. She said, why don't you fly to New York, spend a couple days with me, and then we'll go spend Christmas in Boston with my family. And I said, okay, like we can do that. And so I brought up the option to my ex. He said, I think that's a great idea. I obviously don't want you to spend Christmas by yourself. And so I said, okay, that works. And I'm obviously extremely sad because at this point I hadn't seen him in weeks, and now I don't know when I'm going to see him again because he's getting this surgery on December 21st. So I made plans, booked my flight to New York, and a couple days before I leave, he told me, you know, maybe what we can do is you can come to Denmark maybe a couple days after my back surgery, because the doctors say that I need to be up walking a couple days afterwards, and I think it's just my mom that's gonna come. So what we can do is you can come meet my mom and we can go see like the Christmas lights, and at that point I'll be able to translate and everything. And so I said that's fine. So I was like, I'll fly to New York, go to Boston, spend Christmas with my friend Natalie, and then I'll also have like an extra bag packed for like things to wear in Copenhagen, and just make sure I'm prepared to figure out what the plan is whenever he tells me. And so I think we had decided that it was December like 26th or 27th that I was gonna go to Copenhagen and then spend like a week there. So I go to New York, have a great couple days with my friend Natalie, and then on like the second day I'm in New York, I get a message from him, and he said, oh my goodness, my dad's back in the hospital. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry to hear that. He's like, his infection numbers are bad again, his blood poisoning again, and he ended up getting diagnosed with leukemia. And I just, you know, I wanted to be there for him. And I said, you know, like, do you want me to come? Like, I want to be there for you. Like, I don't want you to feel like you have to navigate through these things without having like your partner there to support you. And he said, right now, I just need to like focus on my family, and I'm grateful for you to be here, but I also don't want you to meet my dad for the first time in a hospital bed. And I'm obviously frustrated because I really want to be there for him, but I also don't want to be too pushy because I'm like, this is your family, your dad's in the hospital. I don't want to put too much on him. And so we made the decision that I was just going to be kind of like on standby, which was fine because I was with my best friend Natalie, and I love her so much. And so I was having honestly a wonderful time with her and her family. And so we had left New York, went to Boston. Obviously, I'm still in constant communication with him, trying to figure out what's happening. And he sends me a message. I think it's on December 23rd. He sends me a message and he says, I'm so angry. I just got into a fight with my sister. And maybe like 5 minutes later, he gives me a call and I'm like, what happened? He said, we're sitting in the hospital room and my dad is obviously laying in the bed, and my older sister looks to me and says, so where are you spending Christmas? And I said, not with you, bitch. And it turned into a huge fight. They start screaming at each other in the hospital. He storms out. He feels so disrespected. His mom's upset. His little sister's upset because, like, you know, they're already spending some of their holidays in the hospital, and like now like they have all this tension in the family. And so I remember just being like so confused as to like why his sister is like this awful person. Like, why is she treating you like this, especially at a time when your dad is not doing okay? And so he calls me, he's like, I'm just so upset. Like, I want to get away. And I said, well, let me know what you need from me. Like, I'm literally a plane ride away. And he said, well, I obviously, like, now that I'm like, don't want to be around my family, I would love to see you. And I said, okay, well, I can book a flight to Copenhagen and come stay with you. And he said, I don't know, I just kind of feel like I just need to get out of Denmark. And at that point, he was obviously in his hometown in Aalborg, which is 4 hours north of Copenhagen. And so he took a train back to Copenhagen. He's spending Christmas completely by himself, so sad. And we're still trying to iron out what the plans are. And he, again, tells me, I want to leave Denmark. And I was like, are you sure? Because at this point, like, I knew that I wouldn't say we were having like financial issues, but I knew like obviously there was like a little bit of tension with like all of his expenses that were adding up. And so I was like, you know, it might be easier for me to just fly there and I can just stay with you. And he's like, I just really want to get away. And I said, okay, where do you want to go? He said, have you been to Paris before? And I said, no, I actually have not been to Paris. And he's like, well, let's do Paris. And I said, okay, I'm absolutely down to do Paris. And so I look at flights. I book a flight from Boston to Paris with a layover in Iceland, and I leave on the 26th, and I get to Paris on the 27th, and I see him. He meets me at the airport. We arranged our flights to make sure we landed around the same time. And something I need to add is before I had gone to Paris, he had told me that he had made a transfer from his business account to his personal account. And obviously in the States, when you make a transfer like that, it's just like a click of a button. Like, I have a business account, it's a click of a button. But he told me that in Denmark, when you make a transfer from your business account to your personal account, it actually has to go through the IRS. They take out the taxes and then they deposit the money into your personal account. And I'm over here thinking like, that's so crazy. But I also know like Denmark is a foreign country that I don't know anything about. I didn't question it for a second. And so he said, I'm just gonna ask my mom to give me a quick little loan so I can obviously cover everything with Paris and whatnot. And I said, okay, just let me know what she says. And then he basically came back to me and said, she said that she will only give me the money if I spend a couple more days with the family. I said, well, you should do that. Like, I don't want you to feel like I'm trying to take you away from your family by any means. And he said, I don't even want to be around them right now. It's just like not good for my mental health. And then I said, okay, well, what do you need from me? I said, I can cover like the flights and the hotels. It's not that big of a deal. And at that point, we had been on 2 trips together, or no, we'd only been on 1 trip together to the south of France. And then Paris was going to be our second trip. The rest of the times, he had now visited me in Dallas 3 times. And so I told him, I said, I can pay for the flights and the hotels. It's not that big of a deal. He said, are you sure? I said, yeah, of course. He's like, I just don't know what I would do without you. Like, I just feel like I keep hitting these roadblocks and you are there to pick up the pieces every single time. And I'm so grateful for that. And I said, I'll always be there to support you. So now we can go back to landing in Paris. We meet at the airport and he told me, he's like, letting you know I'm not in the best mood. I've been just like really upset. And I said, I am here to make you happy. So we land in Paris, we see each other, we're so happy. And we had the most spectacular trip in Paris. Like, we were just exploring. It was my first time there. And it was, obviously I paid for a lot of that trip and he paid for a little bit of the trip too. So we both kind of paid. And keep in mind, he still owes me $6,000 at this point. I am not concerned about the money. I don't know why I should have been concerned. I should have been noticing these red flags like, bro, like, where's my money? But again, this is someone that I am planning on marrying, and money at this point, like, money comes and goes, and I wasn't focused on that. I was just focused on us. So we finish our trip in Paris, say our goodbyes, and we start just, you know, getting depressed as we always do when we say goodbye. And I board my flight to Dallas, and he asked me, what are your thoughts on us meeting with an immigration attorney just to get an idea of what the process entails? And I said, absolutely, I would love to do that. Obviously, I had Googled and looked into a few things, but nothing concrete. At the time, one of my best friends was working part-time for immigration attorneys. So I reached out to her. I said, hey, can I get her contact information? And she said, yeah, of course. She gives me her contact information. And I call her, we set up a meeting, and obviously, you know, still the time difference. He had a work trip in Norway that he was at. And at this point, also, little side note, we had started sharing our locations while we were in Paris. So I had his location at this point, and I could see that he was in Norway. And he also FaceTimed me from the hotel room. So he was in Norway, 100%. And we had a call with the lawyer, and we were discussing the process. And she tells us it's gonna take 18 months for you guys to get all of this process after the time you get married. And I was like, 18 months? She's like, everything is super backed up because of COVID. I always wanna let my clients know this stuff so that they are fully prepared. And I just felt like that sounded like such a long time. But we finished a conversation with the lawyer, and I then call my ex, and we're talking, debriefing on everything. And there's two different types of ways to get a permanent residency in the United States. There's consular processing, and then there's another way where you basically apply for the visa and you're living in the States full time while you're processing the visa. So obviously, because he was still working a lot and traveling a lot for work, and because of his dad's health, we decided we would do consular processing, because why not? But then we start having the discussions on, okay, but the clock starts after we get married. And that's when he says, well, I would marry you tomorrow. And I was like, well, I would marry you tomorrow. And he was like, wait, really? And now the time has come for me to drop the first of many bombs on you guys. This man is actually not my ex-fiance. He is my ex-husband.